All right. Well, welcome. This is going to be a ScalaWags 2.0 podcast. We have no episode numbers anymore because we don't know what's happening. And we're enjoying ourselves. We're going to start by giving you a little recap of what we've been up to for the past 3 years. I decided to make Star Trek my whole-time job and became a Google Assistant person and disappeared for a while. And it was fun, but now I'm back.
Did you try and add Majel Barrett's voice into the Google Assistant?
If I could have, I would have. Yes, I did everything within my power, which was awesome. Like basically I made one line of code change and then called it a good 5 years.
Can you sing our theme song? Do you remember our theme song?
Yeah, it's like do something like that.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
I remember it well.
It's very, very accurate.
There you go.
All I could remember was the Scala Love theme song. Actually, that was all that came to mind.
I mean, that's a better theme song, honestly. But yeah, it's
all in the branding.
Exactly. Okay, who wants to go next? I'm going to nominate. We're going to go left to right from my screen. So Seth, you look like you're in the mountains.
Yeah, so a little over a year ago, before the pandemic started, I moved from San Francisco to Reno, basically for the reason that everyone does that, which is to get away from the rent in California.
I thought you were going to say so that they could gamble.
I can neither confirm nor deny.
Fair enough.
Now, Is it gambling on real estate or other?
I'm renting. I may have missed my chance.
That's like gambling.
Yeah, but it's beautiful here. I have windows on all four sides of my apartment and mountains out all four sides. It's great.
That sounds like a plus.
Yeah. The last time I saw any of you was me and Josh were in Lausanne for a SIP meeting.
Oh yeah.
Then the pandemic hit in the middle, so that was like. The SIP committee meeting was the last normal thing that I did.
Yeah. You had the flu too, didn't you? I remember that.
It's not a good time to have the flu, I guess. Yeah, right at the outbreak of a pandemic.
It's like maybe really nerve-wracking.
Yeah, maybe it's not good timing on catching a cold.
Anyway, should we do popcorn, or I guess I'll direct. So Dick, you're next.
I'm next, am I? Okay, so Jackie and I decided that after 12 years apparently is the limit for perfect weather every single day. So we decided to get out of California and move to Boston instead. And we drove, it was about a year and a half ago now, we drove Route 66, actually a couple of years ago now, drove Route 66 across with the dog. It was a pretty awesome trip.
The American dream.
It actually, it's surprisingly not as far. How do I say this? It's not as hard as you think to drive coast to coast. And we went the roundabout route as well. We went down to Pasadena first and then kind of weaved our way across the country. And it was pretty straightforward. You hear 3,200 miles and you think, God, that's a long way to drive. It was pretty stress-free. And
cars and not motorcycles?
Not motorcycles. No, the bike got shipped across. The bike wouldn't have been very good for Dottie to ride on. Jackie could have been all right on there, although we'd have probably had sore backsides. But I think Dot might have had trouble with that as well. And amongst the other things that are notable from this, I now work at Hopper with a guy that some of you may know called Mark Hara. So.
Wow, I was wondering what happened to Mark. I mean, I had no idea where he went.
Yeah, the original author of SBT for those who weren't around back in the day.
It was much simpler. It was a much simpler SBT back then.
Yeah, Josh was the one that really messed it up.
It's true.
Josh
Eugene's been trying to unwind that ever since.
Blame everything on me. It's fine.
I will actually.
Yeah, I blame it on macros related to my talk. Okay, let's move on to Spiewak.
Oh yeah. So I'm like the only one who didn't move other than Josh, who I guess is like planted in Pennsylvania. But like, I did like a whole bunch of different things and like startup stuff for a while. And then CTO things for a while. And then now I'm at Disney, which was like not a career move that I anticipated, but it's actually really fantastic.
I did not know that. Are you Disney streaming?
Yes.
It like this? Oh, it's the streaming bit. Okay, very
good.
Yeah,
but there's a lot of Scala here.
Yeah, your mouse ears have slipped down onto the sides of your head.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's
Also,
true. Well, I'm not
isn't-
allowed to do those because the lawyers will come after me.
Isn't it
That's
true
nice
that
to
we're
hear.
gonna? Sorry, go ahead.
I'm just saying it's nice to hear. There's lots of Scala, and as far as I've seen so far, Disney Plus seems to work. So other streaming services don't.
Yeah,
So this is all like an endorsement, right?
everyone used Disney Plus. I think
Oh
Daniel.
my God,
froze.
Daniel froze in like manic state.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
okay.
There he is.
I'm going to take the opportunity to make fun of you. I heard that they were originally going to call it Disney Streaming Services, but then when you joined, they added the plus. Is that true?
Ooh.
Disney Streaming Services Plus.
Plus, yeah.
Plus,
Plus, but they're
But
not
then they
allowed
decided
to use
take
my
off
name.
the streaming
I guess.
services part
Well,
to make it easier.
It's kind of like share. More is better. Like the plus just means Daniel Spiewak.
Yeah.
Exactly. I would love to take credit for that branding. There's a lot of pluses, like just randomly applied to things. ESPN
Paramount
Plus,
Plus
Disney
now,
Plus.
yeah.
Yeah,
When
it's
do we
very
get type
confusing.
level plus?
I'm
no.
pretty sure the Disney lawyers would come after you because I would bet they've
They-
copywritten the symbol.
Well-
Just the symbol plus. Okay.
Just
all
the
right.
symbol.
I'm never going to do addition again.
Yeah.
Well,
All right.
is C++ in trouble?
They
have
yeah.
two. That's
They
fine.
have two
It's
pluses,
Totally
so
distinguished.
it's officially different than one plus.
Officially, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
This is
You can never
this is
confuse
actually
them.
the whole reason that the increment operator in C was like the double plus. They were originally going to make it like a prefix or suffix single plus. They thought that was much more intuitive, but Disney's lawyers contacted them and like there's just
From the
not an
future.
option.
Like they
Yeah.
invented time travel to stop it.
Yeah,
Oh, this has
Um,
been trademarked for a long time.
Yeah. Should we move on to Heather?
yeah.
Yeah. So I moved to Pittsburgh from Switzerland. I have to say, I think I enjoyed the view in Switzerland a lot more. Pittsburgh's all right though. I'm at CMU. I'm a professor now. But actually, I'm not really in Pittsburgh at the moment. Hold on, I can change. I'm in Florida because Pittsburgh really is as snowy as that background looked. And the most exciting thing is that I was almost late to this call because I had to go get an alligator head. There it
Yeah.
is. Can you see it?
I'm actually afraid to ask why you had to get an alligator head.
Because people seem to think that this is interesting, and these things are like everywhere in Florida. I mean, you go to the gas station, you can buy an alligator head because Florida. I mean, and so whenever I tell somebody I'm in Florida, do you want something? And then they're like, well, what kind of souvenirs do you have? I'm like, I don't know, alligator heads. And then they freak out and they want an alligator head. I mean, there's a few alligator heads scattered around Martin's office because I kept bringing them back from Florida every time I would go home. And yeah, now
And he
now
never
it's
There's an
noticed.
underscore joke in there somewhere.
Is that what you're saying? He never noticed that you just kept putting alligator heads in his office?
Well, he certainly noticed.
Oh, okay.
I think that he's not a very like talkative person, so I'm pretty sure that he decided to keep his opinions to himself, whatever they were. So I don't know what they are. I just keep on doing the Florida thing and gifting him alligator heads, right? Because showing appreciation, alligator head.
I would not feel appreciated if you gave me an alligator head. I would feel moderately intimidated and perhaps
Oh.
somewhat creeped out.
We gave an alligator head to a Swiss child, and this was interesting because
And
the
that was
Swiss
legal?
child- yes, and well, nobody.
It wasn't
well,
attached to the alligator at the time.
Well,
Otherwise, that would have been
that's-
illegal.
that's the funny part of the story. The child was very upset when we gave it to him, not because it was an alligator head, because he wanted the rest of the alligator too. I'm not kidding. He was like, why would you only bring part of it? We're like, good question. I'm sorry. I wasn't prepared for this question. Right.
Wow.
Well, I hope you enjoy the alligator head with all the teeth. Right.
Well, I think with that we should probably migrate into talking more about Scala. It's good. It's really good to see everybody.
Yeah, it is.
For sure. And so we've all been up to various things, but there's one important thing that I think brings us all back, which is the discussion around
Oh,
Scala
no.
3 and the imminent release.
Yes, and
Yeah.
by imminent, what is the latest on imminent? Do we know yet?
RC1 next week.
Yes, I heard
Yes.
that. Okay, yeah. So, that's great. I've been meddling. I've been experimenting. Every year there's you guys probably know this. There's a kind of fun thing that happens in December called the Advent of Code, and it's just like a series of programming exercises. And I thought this year, what the hell? I'll grab Scala 3 and try everything in Scala 3, and really went for it. Trying all of the stuff like the white space, significant white space. And I have to say, it's like a little guilty secret, but I love it. Getting rid of the curlies, it's so clean and it's so liberating, except when you do functional literals right now, because you still have to have them for that, right? And unless you use, I think, an experimental flag, which I didn't get into this time.
Yeah,
So.
why indent colons?
Yeah, now the problem I find now is that when Scala came out and it got rid of the need to put semicolons all over the code, suddenly when you see a semicolon, it's like a cockroach in the code, right? It sort of jumps out at you as this thing that's out of place. And now with the stuff that I was doing in Scala 3, it's like that with function literals, because you've cleaned up all the rest of the code, but you still get these just occasional curlies in there, and they look really out of place now because they're not anywhere else in there. So I wonder what other people thought of this, and whether you've messed with it, or whether you're just sidestepping the whole issue and turning off the significant white space, or just going with the curly braces.
I don't want to be attacked by the internet, so I will defer my opinion on this one.
Oh, you wuss. Get in there. Have some opinion.
Man. This isn't a ScalaWags episode without an opinion. Come on.
Yeah.
Oh man, so I haven't actually had a chance to use the significant white space, so like I'll defer to people who probably have, like Seth and Heather. But like I like it in theory. I like the fact that there aren't 27 different ways to now like indent your code. That's just kind of like a thing from the C lineage of languages that I'm not a fan of. I think that, and there's just,
you'll be happy to know that there still are 27 different ways to indent your code. Just you don't use curly braces.
As long as none of them are 3-space indentation, I will be fine. Like,
well, what about where do you stand on tabs? Yes.
Yeah.
Oh man, great in theory. Go back in time, 40 years and make the editors render them differently, and they'd be fantastic.
Josh, I actually noticed on one of the slides in your talk that on one slide you used 2-space indents and 3-space indents and 4-space indents.
Oh, Josh.
Now, are you positive? Are you positive that I did that? Did you look at the code?
I counted.
Yeah. So basically, one of the things that I find a problem that people will. So I don't actually see it as a problem, because I think the code was entirely readable, and I'm really, really happy with white space.
Oh, it totally was, yeah.
But what I think is the problem is people will have holy wars over how to indent, because it's actually really flexible, and it's really, really nice, and you can like shift things around how you want. And I think copy paste is even easier now, because I can like tab things in and out really, really easily. But unfortunately, there's a little too many options, to the point where someone is going to be like, no, this is the absolute way that you do your style checker on this. And that person, I will say, hey, you go write the automatic formatter the way you prefer it. I'm just going to use it. I don't care.
Yeah. I mean, Olaf can make those decisions for me. I'm fine with it.
Yeah. But that's my fear, is that might happen. Yeah.
It's the Judean People's Front versus the People's Front of Judea, really, isn't it? It's like the smaller the changes get, the more passionately people argue about them.
I mean, that's literally Wadler's law, right? Like the whole argument that like syntax is like 90% of language argument. It's like, it doesn't matter, but it's what everyone's going to talk about.
Yeah, but the white space is really nice. I went whole hog in 2 code bases, and the only thing that still is a cockroach is those function literals.
Yeah.
And even if you use that Y indent thing, I think the reason it's still a Y option is because that it's not that good. It needs a little bit of work. So I think once that's figured out, and it might be that we have to get rid of the old syntax to make the new syntax around function literals better, then I think it'll be quite heavenly. But right now it's really good. Like I'm really impressed with it. I really like it. Also, man, top level methods.
Yeah.
I didn't know how much I wanted them until they're available, and all of the junk that you would like have to invent a class to put stuff in. Again, remember the languages I'm switching between, right? Like today I write Python, Go, Java, C++, and Scala.
Yeah,
sometimes all on the same day. And there's a significant differential between Scala 3 and the rest of those. That's all I'll say.
I'm really enjoying the new syntax in my own coding. It's only the community aspect of it that still worries me a little bit.
Yeah, the coming holy wars on this. It's going to be some interesting times ahead, I think. But yeah, like you, I just decided, hey, it's advent of code. This is the time to go out and play, right? So I just did the whole thing. Went the whole way with the significant white space, and I found that I just loved it. And so yeah. I'm a fan now, especially pattern matches are so clean now.
Yeah.
It's just amazing. So yes, I like that very much.
So one of the questions is, I'm just reading chat. So someone said, what do you think about top level statements? Anyone have a top level statement they want to make about top level statements?
Wait, that's possible. You can do top level
I was
statements.
just gonna say what.
I don't. It does that. It does, my brain is not computing the need or like why you would do this.
Why would
Besides,
that? Why would we want that?
We could have Ruby and Scala if we did that.
You know, little static blocks in Java classes are quite the thing. They're really fun. Think about
but they don't actually do what people think they do. So
but they're static.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you need another reason to like use them besides like, hey, it's static, it's cool?
I do want top level statements and scripts actually.
Yeah,
that makes sense. But I mean, most of the programming that you do in Scala is not scripts.
Yeah, Scala's JVM is not very good for scripting.
No.
Takes too damn long to fire up.
That actually brings up a topic I really want to raise.
Oh, I have opinions on this, Josh. I saw your notes.
You saw my notes. Okay, so here's an interesting thing that I've been watching. All right, I think Java itself is playing defense against all the languages eating into it. One of them was Scala, of course, and so Java 8 lambdas are trying to like curb the need for Scala. But what's interesting to me is like where the offense is coming from now. Docker ruined Java in the sense of I can write a binary and run it anywhere, and I can use a native language, and Java's really not good for that. And so you see Graal VM is like a solution to this of like I want low startup time, VM-y native-ish thing that I can now run on clusters, and that seems to be eating into a lot of server with languages like Go, which I can't actually say my opinion online. Sorry. So you can get into that later. But Go is getting a lot of adoption because it's native, right? And so we have this thing called Scala native, but like what's happening there? Then we also have like Node.js and JavaScript and this whole like, be closer to the web kind of world happening, right? And the JVM just keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, right? So what do you think? Like, what's happening with Scala on this front?
I reframe this a lot. I have a lot of complex thoughts around this one. There's no simple thing to this. First of all, I will say,
well, the simple thing is Josh is wrong.
I wouldn't even go that far. I think it's so. First of all, you have to realize there are still some, and actually quite a few, A-listers, like really superb people working on the JVM and the Java language itself. I do think that Java had a bit of a wake-up call with languages like Scala coming in on the scene and adding closures, adding function literals, at which point, there was, if you remember, God, this must be 15 years ago now, there were these kind of holy wars at the time about whether lambdas should be included in Java at all. And there was the BGGA proposal. Gosh, this is like ancient history now. But, there was lots and lots of fighting about it. And suddenly...
I think your old is showing.
Yeah, I know. But I was there at the time, man. This was the time of the Java posse. And, it was interesting because all of a sudden that was no longer a conversation anymore. It was like it moved from, okay, how are we going to do these things? And I think they added them pretty well into Java. It was late maybe, but it was good. When you've got people that can this, I can see this further down in Project Loom and stuff like that. When you have people the caliber of like John Rose still in there doing stuff, it's less about defense, I think, and more about trying to add the features that make sense in a way that makes sense in a language that is extremely well established and has a lot of, how do I say this without sounding really negative, has a lot of conservatism behind it. Okay, no, you can't do big, wrenching, sudden changes in Java. But given that, I think the pace of development it was bad 15 years ago. There was nothing happening. It's definitely picked up pace since then and stuff like that. And with Project Loom, I was looking at that a little bit earlier on. I think I spoke to John Rose, gosh, probably 10 years ago on the subject of tail calls. in the JVM. And he was really keen on the idea at the time, but of course it's like priorities and funding and other things getting in ahead of it. I still hope to see those supported at the JVM level at some point.
Wake us up in another decade, and we'll check on it.
Well, I'm not gonna go there. I'm not going to second guess any of those folks, because they have a lot of concerns that we're not really thinking about. But yeah, I think Loom looks pretty interesting. I'll shut up now. But
this is Dick loving the JVM. So this has like been a large scale like sort of defense that Dick has given in favor of the JVM. He's speaking like anti JVM is shrinking.
Less loving it, more speaking up in defense of an old friend,
Okay.
an old friend.
Okay.
I mean, he's not wrong though. Like, and yeah, like, I mean, to me, that's, so the JVM is a much more advanced piece of machinery than most people give it credit for. And I think it's kind of in vogue to hate on the JVM a little bit. I guess it really always has been.
It's always, I don't think there's ever been a time where it's, I mean, maybe before I started programming, but that it was the coolest thing. And now it's just been the worst ever since I started programming. So
maybe Gosling, like when he first committed it, he was like, I really like this thing. But the moment he showed it to his coworker, it was like, what is
everybody
this?
complained.
Yeah, it's been that way ever since. I think the JVM is really, really good. Even with C2, which is a very dated backend for the JVM, it's really, really good. And Graal makes it even better. They've been improvements to the JVM quite consistently throughout various, the various iterations since the version of Java that we all use. And especially things like Shenandoah and stuff like that are really, really exciting. Here's the reality of it. There is no virtual machine at all on the market today for any language which approaches the general sophistication of the JVM from the standpoint of garbage collection and from the standpoint of hotspot optimization. That is an
true.
Objective fact.
That is absolutely true.
I would just lob out there, I'm not arguing for this, but I would lob out there the obvious choice of what about the CLR?
It's
a good point. Here's what I'll say in defense of the JVM. I think you're right on a lot of the things with the JVM that it's strong at. The one area that it's losing at, which is unfortunate, is actually around startup times. And I know module systems were meant to solve this, but no, they didn't. Because here's the thing. If you want to start up quickly, you have less bytecode you need to load and introspect. Just less. You need less of it. And the JVM, I don't see that disappearing ever. And when you have this ephemeral compute kind of a thing, like where I want to spin up servers quickly, startup time is how you fix your 99th percentile. Unfortunately.
Okay.
Right? And that's that I have concerns about, and that's a very server specific concept. But there's other things that are really, really good about the JVM that we're losing in these other languages that people are using today, right?
Yes.
So
So I want, because you brought up Docker earlier, and now you're talking about startup time, and I want to make sure that those are very clearly separated, because people who haven't done sort of server architecture at scale might not actually realize this. But Docker, your startup time actually doesn't matter all that much. Docker is going to freeze dry you anyway. So for the most part, if you're doing something that's containerized, you also don't care as much about startup times per se, because you're sort of, it only happens when you scale out, right? Serverless is where this actually matters, right? When you're doing Lambda and all the other things that are like Lambda that shouldn't exist, the JVM is not a good fit for that space. I would argue that space is not a good fit for most of our reality, but that's a different argument. But the JVM is not a good fit for that space. And that's where I think this is more compelling. But for serverless stuff, but for just general containerized stuff like Kubernetes or Fargate or whatever you happen to be using that's random and branded, the JVM is the best thing you can have.
Yeah, and actually, backing up a little bit further, this is not really Scala, but what Josh said is just one of these kind of rules, these hard and fast rules of software development. It's a hell of a lot easier to not put something in the first place than it is to get rid of it once it's there. And this is the problem with modules and breaking up the JVM. There's stuff in there from 20 years ago that people don't know what it does anymore. They can't just rip it out because something will break if they do. So, you start pulling apart these things and stuff stops working and you're like, I didn't know it did that. What the hell? We can't lose this. And, this kind of idea of, we'll just break it up and make it into small modules. It doesn't work that well. It's had 30 years to grow into a massive hairball. It's going to take a while to tease it apart. So it is, this is one of the things that I really have, as I've gone further and further on in my career, I've become more and more conservative about the amount of code that I'm pushing out. Like lines of code. At this point, I pretty much have the opinion that every line of code that I write is in some way a failure. It needs to justify its existence if it's going to remain. That's how much I don't like adding new lines of code into things. It's like you really want to do as little as possible.
Are you saying that your output has been decreasing over the years?
My solutions have been increasing as a result of this, but the amount of code that I produce is way less, orders of magnitudes less. It's much more dense.
I'm going to throw out something crazier for you that I've learned. Usually, the problems I have with my software are about the people, and a conversation solves more code than code does. But that's kind of a different discussion, and that might be more unique to open source and or companies of 40,000 engineers. But I think it applies in open source for sure. There's a lot of things in the Scala community where people are solving a problem that some conversations and some, discussions and then agreement would help. But then when we disagree, we end up with 5 ways to do the same thing.
You just fork. And
Yeah.
we have an alternative.
But you know what?
Version. Alt that thing.
We should all agree that my forks are better.
That's true.
As long as that's true, then everything's good.
All right, that's fine.
The issue of removing things, I think, is sort of a danger for Scala going ahead because a lot of stuff is being added to Scala 3, and it's being added on the promise that it will eventually be possible to remove some other things that are no longer needed. But that day when it becomes possible to actually start removing things, is not here yet. And so we Scala 3.0 is hopefully the largest Scala that will ever be, because everything went in, but nothing has started coming out yet. There are some exceptions to that, but a few things did come out. But it's the big simplifications that still lie ahead, I think.
Well, I had a question on this, so I want to get a read from everyone here. Do we think the Scala ecosystem as it currently exists today, there's like ecosystems of libraries that work well together, and there's some attempts to join some of these ecosystems that we see today in Scala 2. Do we see a new Scala 3 ecosystem kind of building itself from the ground up with like someone's going to reinvent, I don't know, something silly like logging or Cat's effect, I don't know, in Scala 3 with like a completely different way of doing it that they can't maintain on Scala 2? And then that's going to start to get adoption. And then we're going to slowly see this new evolution of a whole new stack of components that people work on that are Scala 3 only. And then we have this brand new ecosystem and the old stuff kind of slowly goes the way of the buffalo. Right?
Yeah, except that I think there's, the problem is always people, right? And there are, particularly with a language like Scala that has so much power and so much expressiveness, there's going to be different factions in the community that want to do things different ways, and they're going to go and do them different ways, just as they have done with Scala 2. And it's always going to be a bunch of different solutions, I think. I can't see us getting away from that.
Oh, I don't mean the different solutions. I mean the existing stack that you're used to today. 5 years from now, is that going to be as popular as it is today, or will we have some new thing?
I'm not sure that there's that many libraries that have lasted even 5 years, are there? In the current stuff, I mean, things get replaced all the time.
Scala test.
Well, okay, yeah, there are some.
Akka is about 10 years old now.
Yeah, Akka's been around for a while. Play has been around for 7 years, depending on how you count now. Depending on whether or not you include the original versions. Scala test, Scala check, Specs 2, especially if you include Specs 1 in that lineage.
All right. I can also give a bunch of examples that aren't, or that are very dynamic though.
Yes.
Like DB database libraries
Well,
changing all the time. Lots
well,
and lots
because
of
the
new ideas coming
databases
along.
are changing all the time. I mean, that's not the fault of the language. That's that the target is moving.
Even Postgres, even database libraries that target Postgres are changing all the time, and there's new ones coming along replacing the old ones. People are like, "This is better. We're going to use this."
Isn't there a new JDBC coming? Just want to throw that out there. I mean, yes, JDBC has been stable and locked for a long time, but I thought there's a new spec coming around async JDBC.
You see, that's long overdue, I think. I mean, if you look at NIO, the way NIO revolutionized the whole input-output async stuff for Java, it's long overdue for doing that on a simple database layer as well.
Though ironically, Loom makes it irrelevant, and you could just use the regular JDBC.
Yes, this is true. Well, maybe that's the way it goes.
Is the answer we don't? It's long overdue, but now it's no longer needed.
Yes.
Because Loom.
I'm very much a fan of like the effort to make JDBC asynchronous. Like I think that's good, and I think that Loom really is not going to match up to the promise of sort of like what it's purporting to do for a number of reasons. But like it is sort of ironic that like Loom and async JDBC are like not that far apart in terms of timelines when async JDBC has been a thing that people have wanted for like 20 years.
I don't know if anyone cares about this, but if the lessons of Go apply to Loom, then anyone who uses any kind of native integration is up for hell, even more than normal in the JDK once Loom hits, because you do not want to link Go to anything not Go ever.
And even staying within the JDK, it's not going to be panacea. Like if you, for example, do a new INET socket address, you're going to do a DNS resolution most of the time on that, which is a blocking native call because it's hell to implement DNS clients like yourself. If you do any file IO and you're not on the super latest Linux kernel or Windows, so if you're on Mac or on like a normal version of Linux, you will have blocking IO, period, in native calls, and like the JDK can't fix that for you. So like, yeah, the lessons of Go are very applicable here, and like no amount of witchcraft in the JVM will fix that.
I'm going to throw up the, we've mentioned this several times, but haven't really told people what it is, and not everybody may know, thing about Loom. We should probably, actually say what Loom is trying to do here. And, but, basically there's kind of three major parts that they're talking about adding. There's the kind of virtual thread approach, what do you call fibers? Very lightweight kind of async handling. Delimited continuations. This reminds me a little bit of, again, showing my age. Thank you, Daniel, for pointing that out earlier. Does anybody remember Stackless Python from way back in the day? You may not. It was like a version of Python that basically got rid of the execution stack and made everything kind of this same kind of delimited continuations idea where you could just kind of jump around in the code and do really wacky things without ever running out of stack space. And the much wanted and loved tail call elimination, sort of optimizing out tail calls and that sort of thing into loops internally and making them run more efficiently.
Yeah, maybe async could be the need to support async could be the key factor that makes that finally happen. That makes whoever makes these decisions at Oracle actually say, okay, now's the time.
Yeah, so we've been, DB's particularly relational databases, something I've been using just recently with a library called Quill. If you guys have heard of Quill, it's a pretty nice little library. It has a number of backends that are written for it. Some of them are async, and pretty much all of the async ones have like serious problems in one way or another, to the point that we tried to use them. One of them leaked memory like a sieve. I mean, it leaked everything you put in, or everything that got buffered was leaked. Other ones are sort of flaky, to the point that we ended up just using the JDBC backend and wrapping a future around every call, which is kind of, it leaves a bad taste in your mouth to do that, but it was actually the fastest executing option of all of the things that we tried. Believe it or not, you just have to have a suitably sized thread pool to kind of absorb that. So something like this would really make a difference wrapped around it, I think, and make it run a lot better. But I am kind of disappointed that we've had all this time and there isn't really a good async database option still. that I found.
There's a lot of half-implemented flaky ones.
Yeah, that's the problem. Yeah.
Even in Java.
The finagle one that we were using basically just leaked everything that it buffered. And it took me a while to figure out why the hell we were running out of memory so quickly on Kubernetes instances. And that was it. It was everything. In fact, it got leaked twice because they copied the buffer internally as well and leaked the copy in addition. Just to really just to make sure absolutely sure. Yeah.
Well, you want to remember things, right? Like,
oh, that was a good 3 days of my life right there tracking those down. So.
Josh, I want to come back to your question about like Scala 3, new Scala 3 only solutions. I want to like call the entire community's attention to the situation that exists now, which is that there's about to be a gold rush on this, I think. And it's a huge opportunity because those of us who are responsible for maintaining existing open source stacks, we're busy. Like we're busy keeping the existing stuff going, making it cross compile on 2 versus 3. We haven't had time to think about what we could do if Scala 2 was out of the picture and we could do only 3. Everyone should really be jumping on this, like starting next week, basically when RC1 comes out. Like go for it. Make your claim on this new land which is waiting for you.
I mean, I already started.
This is where I fess up and say we're not even on 2.13 yet. So it's going to be a little bit of a trip before we get there, I think.
Yeah, I think Scala 3 has a new opportunity and new ways of thinking that change how you would design an API and what you would consider elegant. And I think you're going to see that start to take over, and it's ways that are not compatible with Scala 2. And given what you said, I think this comes from different people, which means it's going to look different. The question is there's 2 questions, I guess. Is the community large enough that we'll have people do this? I say yes, because I've been in open source long enough that people scratch every itch possible. I never thought that I would see, what was it? The Scala gaming library company. Do you remember them? Where they had like this functional reactive gaming thing that they released a game
on. I do vaguely remember that.
Yeah, that's something I never thought I'd saw or see. I know English, and we did. Right?
Really?
Well, I kind of know English.
You live in Pennsylvania. Like,
I know Pennsylvania Dutch, but I don't.
You know of English.
I know. I speak well. In any case, I guess the point is, I think we will see. I personally think we will start to see some evolution in the libraries. I don't know where it's going to come from. And I think the ecosystems that are kind of friendly and welcoming to this will evolve with it and do well. I think libraries that push back on it might disappear over time. Something to pay attention to. It's just something that, is an inevitability of people and politics and stuff, right? Like people will want new change. They'll want the new thing. And so finding a way to like help these new things come into existence and like continue to use the old thing, I think will be important. And I also want to say, I don't think legacy means bad. I work on a lot of legacy systems. I work for a company that predominantly writes C++. I mean, God, like if you were to pick the language that you want to write all of your microservices in to do like expressive business logic,
it's so secure. There's no chance of a buffer overrun.
Yeah, where you need all your intense security, right? Obviously, you'd pick C++. Or at least you would maybe when it was implemented, maybe. No.
You're depressing, Heather.
I really hope someone screenshotted that. I hope someone screenshotted that.
Really awful. I mean, I had a lot more respect for your employer than I do now, like prior to that fact. Holy shit.
I think that's known, but wait, I mean, there's lots of languages in there.
I didn't know that fact. Now I'm just like, disgusted.
There's lots of languages that are used. Like, I'm just saying, there's a significant number of microservices written in C++. And
stop saying that. There are children present.
It's really bad.
I think
crowd.
Here's the important point: is like if I don't have to touch those and they keep running, that's a line of code I don't have to write.
That's true.
if they're fully tested, if they work, like,
Well, probably many thousands of lines of code that
Yeah.
could have been one line of code that you don't have to write.
and that's true. Except, hold on, it's C++, so it's like 20,000 lines of template code, and I write one template, and then it creates my server. But anyway, point being, like, when it comes time to change that behavior, like, it could be that I have a new microservice that I build in Scala 3 that's completely different than my Scala 2 one. That's okay. And then this thing evolves and eventually takes over enough responsibility that I get rid of the old one. But it's okay to have both. Like, that's not the end of the world. We all deal with legacy code. It's something we all have to deal with. We all have to live with our past mistakes. That's another thing that's interesting with open source, right? You want your APIs to be perfect, clean, right? No, we've all made past mistakes. We all experimented in college. You know, Scala tried real hard with this any value thing and was like, oh man, maybe we should change that, right? Like, we all have this legacy, and it's okay. It's like, it's a sign of growing. Like, I think it's going to happen.
Yep, you can't succeed without failure.
And the best place to fail is in the open, where no one will ever let you forget it.
Well, you do learn the lessons well that way.
This is why I don't let Boodle introduce me at conferences anymore, because she just kind of goes back to the oldest open source project she can find that I was ever involved in, and then like pulls random factoids from there. It's like, shame me in my house.
What was the thing that was a Google Wave clone that you worked on?
Novell Vibe was
That's
the
right.
final trade name for it.
Oh,
That was
yeah.
actually really cool. That was really cool. Like, working on that mathematics, like, just kind of like figuring out how to actually do operational transformation, like, that still is like, more people should learn that math, because like, it basically takes CRDTs and makes them like much more usable. It's just that very few people read those papers because they don't kind of connect them together. But it was cool.
Is this the next CATS library to come out?
Oh man, if I had more time, like, I mean, first I would like make a new JSON library, because that's what one does. But like, after I made a new JSON library, I would get someone to pay me to replace Spark, and after that, I would have, a new,
I got you covered on a new JSON library.
Is that the library that you already started working on for Scala 3?
Yeah, I just made something to, so I re-implemented protocol buffers from scratch, because that's what you do. And it also supports JSON, but it's not like it's not ready to go. It needs a bunch of love and attention, because, as you know, taking one of these libraries from, hey, it works locally, to like, hey, people should rely on this, is a bit harder. And I'm currently locked on.
If
protocol
only everybody
buffers
knew
cheat
that.
like hell. Yeah, protocol buffers cheat like hell. They can serialize a message in like 80 milliseconds, and the way they do this is they actually pre-serialize the message, and like, when you think you're getting a string, you're not. You're getting the raw bytes of a serialized message. Yeah. It's wonderful.
Yeah, and they just place it in a buffer. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I figured out some tricks in Scala where I can beat them, but I don't have enough time to finish it. So yeah. Oh well.
Come talk to me later, because I actually work on like custom protobuf implementations as well for other reasons.
Yeah.
I don't want to work on protobuf at all, but like, talk to me.
I mean, honestly, who wants to work? Okay. Everybody, I'm going to take a survey. We're going to go around the room. Who wants to work on JSON, protocol buffer, or YAML? Raise your hand.
No,
if you want them.
Also, I don't want to write another damn CSV library either. I think we have enough of those too.
Man, actually, that sounds fun. I'm going to add that quick.
Can you leave now?
Well, I'm happy that this was a protocol buffer library, not a JSON library. To be honest, it would have been the icing on the cake if it was a JSON library.
It does JSON too.
Oh my god!
And it does Minecraft named binary tag format, so that you can like deserialize your Minecraft data as well into JSON. Like, you can just go all over. It's just it's your pickling library. I just stole it and called it Scala 3 and
great.
redid all the interfaces.
Oh my god! This is. Ugh.
It's the best.
So wait, do you play Minecraft? I don't get it. Who plays Minecraft?
Well, I played with my kids. Yeah.
Okay. I'm just curious. I mean,
I was looking for a open standard binary format that was not protocol buffers, that could be implemented in about 10 minutes. And
be in code.
Right.
Be in code.
I did. Be in code. Yeah. No, I wanted to be able to do it in 10 minutes, and like, there's literally a single Wikipedia article, so I could do it. Like, it was fine.
But be in code like is the single Wikipedia article. Like, you do that and you can read any torrent file you want.
Oh,
Why wouldn't you do that?
Are we having opinions again?
I'm sorry. This
I
is
feel
not
like
a place for
Spark and
opinions.
Akka were Scala's big
Sorry.
frameworks. Interesting. People are talking about Scala's big frameworks here. So I think it would be remiss if we didn't talk about Spark, Akka, right? And Scala 3 in correlation. So predictions, over, under. Does Spark ever get to Scala 3?
They have. There was a post actually that like someone sent me that they have a 2.13 binaries that they're encouraging people to try with Scala 3. Like this is Spark.
We just want to see how badly it will crash, basically, for now, to see
Yeah.
what the problems are. But I mean, the point is that there's an intention, it seems. To
That's
move
good. I
towards
mean, that's the
Scala.
Akka motto, let it crash. So
How much does Spark rely on macros? Because that's really going to be the sticking point.
Back in the day, it was a lot, but
Yeah.
I've stopped doing Spark plumbing, so I don't know.
I was told recently by someone who does Spark plumbing that closure cleaner is no longer actually essential. So
Oh, that's
you
good.
could, which is, yeah, I agree. That's very good.
But they still
Would've
do a
been
whole
better
bunch of
if they just
bytecode
forced-
emission. Like they're emitting random
Yeah.
bytecode all over the place, right?
I mean,
That
that's like the
sounds like it's
least
for
of their
performance.
problems.
So
but-
they replaced like macros with let's just emit bytecode here.
But hold on, I want to step into this notion
That's
of
what I thought.
a Spark plumber though. Like if I'm having trouble with my Spark code, like it suddenly just explodes all over my data center. Can I give you a call and you'll come on like the weekend?
The Spark
24-hour
cleanser.
I'll be
notice.
like, hey, can you take a look? I just don't know what I'm doing, and you'll kind of like plumb it up. Is that how that
Yeah.
works?
Well, I'm pretty sure every company has a Spark plumber, probably. I mean, there's one person who knows way too much of the innards of Spark, and everybody asks questions to.
Or you hire Databricks, I guess.
Or I guess, yeah. I don't do that. Is that like a part of their business, whatever offering? They do like consulting? I didn't think they did that.
Yeah, they
Okay.
do that. But normally you kind of have to push on them a little bit. It's not quite like Amazon where like you'll just instantaneously talk to an engineer somewhere. Like with Databricks, you'll talk to salespeople and then you'll talk to sales engineers and then you'll talk to engineers. So it's a little bit of an
Interesting.
indirection.
Gotcha.
All right. So question now. We're gonna go a little meta here with Scala 3 and Spark and this data plumbing and closure finalizer. So in Scala, there's this thing called crap. Actually, I forget what it's called. The,
It's called
syntax tree
crap.
things. Tasty. It's called Tasty.
Ah, right. Okay.
Tasty crap. Yes, tasty crap. So there's this thing called Tasty, where it
Forgot about
serializes.
Tasty.
Yeah, it serializes a syntax tree and sends it around.
No.
Do you see a world where this helps kind of you combine that
Yeah.
with like type class derivation, right? Do you see a world where like there's a Scala 3 version of Spark that's like super elegant and clever, where you're shipping syntax trees around and like
You mean no
like,
more
things
jar
get better?
shipping?
Yeah. Well, it's a jar. It's just
sorry,
it's we'd call it a tar because it's a archive of Tasty tar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not been used at all. That won't be confusing.
Never.
We should
yeah.
gzip it as well and pass it around as a tar.gz file because that will really help everybody understand what's going on.
Agreed.
And
This
it'll be
solves the world.
so sticky and difficult to catch for the servers. We should call it a tar ball.
Yeah. Yeah. It's good ideas here. All right, but so I mean, back in the day, so I've not been in the Tasty loop for a long time, but back in the day, I mean, this was like Martin was very, very obsessed with that, with Tasty being that solution for moving code around, or rather just moving, I don't know, things around. It doesn't have to be specifically code, but persisting ASTs for, I don't know, maybe this would be useful for some meta programming. I don't know. But he was very excited about this back in the day, and I mean, there were some people who worked on it. I don't know. I lost track, and I don't know what happened.
Well, if you compile in Scala 3,
So you graduated,
Tasty
is
files
what you're
show up
saying.
everywhere.
Well, no, I mean, this is even after I graduated. I just don't know if it, where things have gone since then.
Yeah, well, Tasty is the bridge between 2.13 and Scala 3, isn't it?
That was always the intention. Yes.
Yeah.
That was the hope, and it's postponed now. So I think the Tasty dream is not dead. It's just like we didn't have time to really make this a reality, to make Tasty the new basis for the ecosystem in 3.0. But I'm still optimistic that this dream will come back to life sort of once the transition to 3.0 is complete. I think it's really just like a lack of effort for a small org to make this happen.
Yeah, no criticism.
yeah, more, it wasn't that there was some fundamental problem with this dream.
No criticism. I know that the idea was that trying to bridge Scala 2 to Scala 3 with Tasty was that, so that you could have libraries that didn't make the jump immediately to Scala 3, but still be able to move to Scala 3 yourself. That, I guess that also must be on hold as a result of this. So
Scala 2, we're rolling a Scala 2 release next week, specifically to include support for Scala 2 consuming Scala 3 RC1 libraries through Tasty.
Oh, cool.
So Jamie Thompson at the Scala Center put roughly a year of work into making that work. I think we don't know yet how big a role that's going to play, just because there aren't. Everyone's just been so busy cross-building between 2 and 3. And also Tasty has been a moving target, and so people haven't been
still.
Yes, I mean, now in small ways rather than large ways, right? So it's just tweaks happening. But next week, 3.0 RC1 will come out. Scala 2.13.5 will come out with support for reading Tasty from Scala 3. And then I think we'll see, how much adoption this gets. In order for this to be useful, we need library authors who want to use Scala 3, are willing to run a little bit of risk with being an early adopter of the Tasty Reader, and they have to be willing to stay in the subset of Scala 3 that Scala 2 can understand.
So perhaps this is for some sort of like expert library maintainer that is willing to put in this extra effort, or what? I mean, like I'm talking. I mean, some open source library perhaps.
Yeah, and so I think we'll know more. This will unfold this year.
Yeah, the way it's been treated so far is basically the library ecosystem tried really hard to use with.ecompat as the bridge between the two, and that created problems mostly because Scala 2 has bugs, actually, that Scala 3 doesn't have, because Scala 3 is actually a really nice compiler. And then that led to a situation where most of the ecosystem is treating it as a normal Scala upgrade, where you just kind of like cross build between the two and like never shall the twain speak.
Got it. I mean, that makes sense though, right? Because I mean, that's exactly the same approach that people have taken to sort of major changes in Scala in general, right? So I mean, what are not until there's an RC is it going to be actually seen that people will start to mix these things other than just cross building.
Mm-hmm. Do we think cross building was a mistake in general, or is it the solution to all problems, Scala?
Well, someone here works with Mark Hara.
It is beer. It is the solution to and the cause of all of life's problems. Homer Simpson wisdom, yes, right there.
I think the thing with cross building is that it's like it's a really good solution for a terrible problem to have, right? Like, and I think that's just kind of like my perspective on it. Like Scala, if you rewind years and years ago, right? Scala had two major problems that cross building solved. One of them being like binary encoding issues, like that Scala is sort of always going to have, and Tasty addresses pretty well. And number two, it was like originally like very much a research platform, right? Like think back to Scala 2.6, 2.7, like they broke binary compatibility like between 2.7.1 and 2.7.2. So it was like, it was the absolute Wild West. And cross building was like the only meaningful answer to that problem. And it allowed a library ecosystem to come into existence, right? I think if we had Tasty 10 years ago, maybe we wouldn't have done with cross building. But I think the way I think about Tasty is like it is a binary format which is tuned for Scala, that we are, at least in theory, able to get the same kinds of sort of binary compatibility guarantees that people who write Java get, which is like a big win.
Cross-building has been so successful that I think people actually go overboard with it. Like, I really wish that more people would drop 2.11 from their builds. Yes. And also that it's like, now's the time to start dropping 2.12 too. Like, people are still on 2.12. They should be fine with the libraries they already have.
You got Spark, man.
Yep.
Come on.
Yeah, like a superhero, Sparkman.
Flink is an issue on that one, like especially if you're in the Amazon ecosystem. like I think the problem with 212 to 213, that jump, is the collection library changes were really painful for certain people. Like for some, you just don't even notice and it's just great. But like for other libraries, it's like climbing Mount Everest. And that's just kind of the case.
And dropping 212 is going to be great. You know, there's going to be a lot of code and a lot of having to, you know, it's like if you're an open source contributor in Scala right now, you have to know both collection APIs and you have to know a bunch of tricks for cross compiling between the two. And this is like a drag on the whole sort of joy of working on Scala open source, I think. When we're in a 3 only world, you know, the joy is going to be really great. But even just getting 212 out of the picture is going to be a big improvement. And I don't want to, you know, hurt Spark users and hurt other people who are still on 212, but like, those are people who already have applications, who already are using a set of libraries. They're fine. Like, you know, they don't need to be upgrading everything all the time.
As long as you still patch security bugs.
Yeah.
Which we don't have because Scala, right?
Well,
Yeah,
we
the
would
JVM.
have them if we were writing in C++.
That's I guess. I mean, I never have a security bug ever, so I'm good. What you do is you don't interact with users, and then you can't have security
I was
problems.
just going to say, if you get rid of all the people, you don't have any security problems anymore. That is the issue. Security problems come from people. We should get rid of all the people.
All right, so we don't want to end on that note. I think we should end on a different. We have 2 minutes left, I think, in our little discussion here. So let's call next 5 years predictions. You get a sentence or two each person. We're gonna go from my left to right again, or no, we'll go from my right to left to do an inverted. So Heather, you wanna kick us off?
Hold, you gotta give me a second to think about this. I mean,
Nope.
We're all gonna be flying on magic carpets made out of tasty. I mean, I don't know. You gotta give me.
Go for it. Go for it. You can take some time. We'll just stare awkwardly.
We'll just wait for you.
Yeah,
awkwardly.
I mean,
Anyone else have one ready?
I got one.
Okay.
Somebody somewhere will still be complaining at that point that Metals doesn't support 2.11 in 5 years' time.
In 5 years?
Okay,
Awesome.
That's a good one.
Okay.
Oh.
We will have recorded exactly one ScalaWags episode in 5 years' time.
Yeah, this is also true.
Is it this? Does this one count?
This is the one. Yeah, this is the one.
Yeah.
I think in the next 5 years we might actually be able to get together, all five of us in person for the second time ever.
Oh,
yeah.
You know,
Conferences in person might happen again in 5 years.
bit of a tangent, but I swear this is the truth. Somebody asked me, it was like one of these questions people throw out at work, and they're like, you can invent a time machine, where would you go? And my immediate reaction, I didn't even think about, was 2022 to see if this crap is all over yet. Basically, I wanted to jump 2 years.
Pretty dark.
Yeah, I know, man. I know, but that literally was where my head went. Are we going to be clear of this in 2022?
All right, Heather, you're not going to get out of your predictions that easily.
Yeah. So I mean, we're going to. I'm only going to give you ridiculous ones. I mean, so you're going to have to buy that. Like, we're going to go from the significant white space to brain F word. You know, there it is. Keep on moving in the white space direction. Do you know this? Do you know brain fuck?
Yeah.
Okay, good. You know,
So
only ridiculous. Everyone loves it so much. We're just gonna go all the way.
it's really good. It's one of my favorite esoteric languages, but it'd be better if it was pixel art, which is exactly what Picasa is, I think.
No, the absolute best way to do it is to use the UTF-8 whitespace characters. So you get a much broader vocabulary that all looks exactly the same.
Oh my god.
All right.
That's even
So
better.
we need to finish up soon. So who has I like that prediction. Seth, you had a prediction?
Well, this is maybe sort of obvious, but I think we'll look back at this moment, the moment where RC1 is coming out, as the moment where we like stopped arguing and started building, like where we stopped being scared about decisions and about migration, and we'll look back at this at the moment where everything just started taking off. It's going to be great.
See,
I think Heather's was more realistic.
Yeah.
I think so.
I
yeah.
mean, I like Daniel's addition to it, you know, with like the UTF white space, because then we'd have a whole, you know, spectrum of ridiculous white space that we could use. Just so many more variants.
So my prediction is in 5 years' time, I will no longer be associated with SBT by everyone.
I will make sure that is false. Like
Josh,
I still time miles to Eclipse, so like don't tempt me. Like,
I wasn't going to go there. I had the same thought.
yes,
Oh,
exactly.
poor Miles.
Right?
Yeah.
Hey, Josh, I've got one. I predict that in 5 years' time we will still be gaming every week, you and I.
Yes, that is true.
Because I'm not going to let that
Board
go.
games
That's like
or video games.
mostly well, a bit of both actually. Really.
I mean, nowadays, what's the difference? Because
How
board
long-
games are online.
How long have we been playing that continuous scythe game now? Is it like 3 months?
Yeah, just so everybody is aware, Dick and I don't work during the day. We play online Scythe.
No, that's not true. Anyone listening from Hopper, totally not true.
Totally not true. We've had
Totally
a game
not true.
going. So we started it in, I think, December at some point, and we've just like as soon as it ends, we start another one.
Yeah.
If anybody, we have room for 3 more. If anyone plays Scythe, let me know. It's a good time. But be warned, you will get hounded if you don't take your turn during meetings.